All right, first up, we got the DN8 and DN20 tongue and groove style fittings. These are self-sealing fittings that you cannot over tighten. So screw them all the way down. No need for Teflon tape or Loctite or anything like that. It's a metal to metal seal on the tongue and groove style sides of the fittings. I usually hit that with a little bit of a wrench just to give it a nice snug, and no need to go past that. You actually can't physically over tighten them since it's metal to metal. So if I have someone coming to me asking, hey, is this a DN20 or a DN8? I tell them, hey, pull off your wedding ring, stick it there on the end of the fitting. If it's tight, it's probably a DN20. And if it's loose like this, then that's a DN8, depending on what size fingers you have, of course. This is what you would see on the end of a hose. So you connect this hose in up to your breaker, and this would go out to a filling regulator or a gas cart. And generally speaking, you're going to find DN8s on these smaller size breakers and DN20s on your larger size breakers. And this would be on the fill port, like I said, or on your gas cart. On your larger style gas carts, this is going to be the port on your gas cart coming off, and you would have a DN20 female hose with females on either side. Next up, we have our Rectus Type 21 quick disconnect. So this is common for SF6 analyzers. So this would be your input port on an SF6 analyzer, and this would be on the hose side. And click this in like that, and it's spring loaded, so it just snaps right in. Also self-sealing, and generally not used for filling, only used for testing SF6 gas. Next style fitting we have is a flare connection. So this seals on the conical surface here and down inside the female on the conical surface there. It's metal to metal. So whenever you're connecting these up, you want to snug it tight and then hit that with a wrench on either side, get a nice snug fit. Don't use any type of Loctite, thread sealants, or Teflon tape. It needs to seal on that metal to metal contact. And if you saw this on a breaker, it would be like this, and you would probably have an isolation valve up here that you would operate as you need to get gas flowing. Sometimes you'll have a copper gasket that sits in between the conical surface, in between the female and male fittings. Just depends, and you could run into some different angles on this conical surface. JIC and SAE have different angles, so just make sure you have the correct angled conical surface there, and you're good to go. Next up, we have our tapered thread. So this looks similar to the BSP, but it is tapered. So as you go from the neck down to the bottom here, it takes on a gradual taper. The way that these seal is, it actually does seal within the thread, so it's just wedging itself into the connection. So we've got a regulator here. I'll show you what that looks like. I typically like to use Teflon tape on any of my threaded connections, or sorry, NPT, National Pipe Thread connections. The way that I tell people to do their NPT wraps is to look down at it like this, and you're gonna wrap the Teflon tape 3 times clockwise onto that thread. So we'll do that. Pull that tight on the first one. And go 1, 2, 3. Not rocket science there. Just get enough, pull it tight, and you got a nice coverage there. And once you screw it in, you take a wrench to that, tighten it up 2 to 3 turns past hand tight, and you're good to go. Don't over tighten. It really seals pretty nice with the Teflon tape. So that's how a NPT or National Pipe Threaded connection would screw in and seal up. A few notes here about Loctite thread sealants versus Teflon tape. I have found personally that Teflon tape is going to be generally better than using a thread sealant like Loctite 567. This is a good alternative, but I find that for guys out in the field working with fittings that might be taken apart and put back together, that Teflon tape is generally more forgiving and also holds a better seal than Loctite, like the white Loctite 567. Retaining compound, like I mentioned, is going to be used for the BSP connections or connections that you would find like on a hose end to keep those tight seals down, locks down. These are really hard to get undone once you have them dried up. It usually takes 10 to 15 minutes for this to dry, and you're probably gonna have to put a blowtorch and some heavy wrenches into that fitting once you actually have this dried up. So more of a permanent connection there. Thread locker, red Loctite. This is even a stronger thread locker. I don't really recommend this for much just because it's so permanent and not really needed for the SF6 field service guys and fittings that you might run into. So I would avoid this. It's really messy too. It's really liquidy compared to this. It's more of a gel. So just avoid that.